All right, welcome back, guys. So now we're going to do our reassembly. So we're going to take everything we just reassembled and we're going to put it back together and reinstall it. So if we look at our last step, we're going to work our way back from last to first. So the last thing we did was remove our power flex. So the first thing we're going to do in this reinstallment is install our power flex. So here's our power flex with our speaker. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and get this in the right place and line it up. So what you want to do, and you can always use the speaker or the earpiece speaker kind of as your guide. Your earpiece speaker goes right in this little place and it sits right in, guys. All you got to do is put that right in and it sits right in where it's supposed to go. Okay, and you want to line up your little sensor right there at the top. And zoom in a little bit so you guys can see a little bit better. All right, so what we've done is we've just reinserted our power flex with our earpiece speaker connected to it. So right here, what you guys will notice, here is our little sensor that we have right there that had some adhesive on it. It's right back in place. Our earpiece speaker is right back in place. All right, and we want to make sure that our ribbon cable right here is positioned correctly. All right, and the next thing we want to do is go ahead and line this up. So we want to go ahead and put in our power button. Okay, go ahead and line that up and put that in the slot. So you can just grab that, kind of slide that in. It'll fall right into place. If you can't get it, just use your tweezers to kind of line it up. Make sure it falls right in place. All right, and when it's right in place, you're going to go ahead and line up your little plastic piece right underneath. Line up with those holes. And then once you get it lined up, what you want to do is you want to grab your screws and you want to start to insert your screws right into those holes. Okay. All right. Then we're going to grab the next screw. All right. So we got our power. So basically we have our power. And we want to make sure that our ribbon cable is back flush. And our power flex is now reinserted. All right. So the next step we want to do is we want to insert our volume flex. Okay. So we're going to grab our volume flex. And this is, but again, you want to line everything up properly. And you can start by just kind of laying the headphone audio jack in its proper place. If you line that up, everything else kind of falls right in line where it should be. All right. So you want to get that in. Once you get that in, now you can begin to line everything else up properly. Again, also always being careful to not damage your ribbon cable. All right, so let's go ahead and line that ribbon cable up so we can go ahead and kind of press it down and get it in its proper place so we can get that adhesive to kind of stick where it needs to be. And that's going to help us a little bit, have a little bit more stability so we can get things lined up. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to insert our volume flex. So the first thing we have to do is we have to insert our volume buttons. So we're going to grab our little volume buttons and make sure your plus is always going up. All right, so you want to go ahead and insert that. Get that in. Once you get that in, and you can start by inserting your headphone audio jack first. Once you get that headphone audio jack in, everything else kind of lines up. All right, and once you line that up, and once you get everything lined up and you get your buttons in, and you get this little clamp on the back side lined up, then you're going to go ahead and start to insert your screws. So the challenging part with inserting screws, guys, is always trying to hold your screw and hold the thing that you need to insert at the same time. It can be quite the challenge sometimes, but the more you do it, the better you're going to get at doing it. Okay? All right, once you get it lined up, you want to go ahead and start to insert your screws. And once you get it lined up, guys, and the screws start to go in pretty easy, and everything starts to line up really well. All right. So it's all about getting that first screw in, but once you get that first screw in, becomes much more simple after inserting that first screw. All right, that's screw number 2. Inserting screw number 3. All right. Once we do that, we can go ahead and fold down our ribbon and begin to straighten our ribbon up. Okay. And then we want to make sure we go ahead and put in our mute switch. And remember, the red button always goes up towards the front. Get that right in place. Once you get that in place, go ahead and line your connector right up. It should fit right in. So the next thing is you want to take your clamp. Once you get the mute button lined up and kind of sitting in the proper place, you want to take your clamp. You want to make sure the open end of the clamp is at the top. And go ahead and set that in there, and it should line up almost, should probably almost fall right in place. All right, and once you get that in place, next thing you're going to do, you're just going to take your screws and insert your screws. All right, that's one. And there you have it. And that's 2. All right, and once you get those in, what you want to do is you want to test your switches. All right, so make sure you're clicking and make sure you're clicking. All right, so you should hear it nice click, and you should hear it click on both switches, the volume and the switch. All right, and that would signify that you have everything inserted properly. Now you just want to make sure you go ahead and properly press down on your ribbon cables to keep them in place. And you should have both of your ribbon cables right here should be in good order also. All right, and there you have it. Your power flex and your volume flex, or your audio flex, is reinstalled. Okay, and that is the most difficult part. Now let's keep going. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and put our camera back in. So let's go ahead and grab our front camera. All right, guys, so next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and put our camera, front-facing camera back in, okay? So we're going to, if you notice on this, it has a little plastic ring. Sometimes that little plastic ring will come out, sometimes it won't. If it does come out, don't worry about it. Just place it back in, put your finger on it, and turn it over so that you can then insert your front-facing camera. Now, with your camera, you're going to make sure that your ribbon cable is facing down when you go to put your camera in. And your camera basically sits right in that little groove. So there should be a little space, and you just basically push your camera right in, just like that. Your camera goes right in. I'm gonna get a little closer so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let's go ahead and make sure that plastic side on the opposite side doesn't come out. So I'm gonna get a little closer so you guys can see. So you'll notice, and again, we're holding a little plastic in the front, and we're just gonna make sure that our camera is lined up properly, and it is sitting right in that hole, okay? Now, once we get our camera right in that hole, next thing we want to do is we want to put our little clamp on top of that camera that actually holds our camera in. So let's go ahead and grab our clamp. All right, and here we have our little clamp. All right, and you guys will notice this clamp has legs on it. Okay, and those legs actually go over. Okay, they go over the clamps. Okay, so you'll notice one side of the clamp is to the right. This piece right here. Let me point this out for you guys. This piece on this side is the top right, okay? And then you have a clamp on the bottom and a clamp on the left side, okay? So you want to line that up properly, and once you line that up, what you should be able to do then, guys, is just put that clamp right on those clips, all right? And once you place it on top, line it right up. And once you place it on top, all you should have to do is push it right in place, and it should snap right in, guys. So we got everything lined up, and again, we want to make sure that we have our adhesive down. There we go. So we got our camera in. So now we've installed, guys, our volume flex, okay, or our audio flex. We've installed our power flex, okay, or our proximity flex, and we've also installed our front-facing camera, okay. Those are the things we've already installed. So let's go on to the next thing, home button. So we're going to flip that right over, okay, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our home button, okay. So we have our home button, and all we got to do is run that home button right in, and then we're going to place it right in the front, just like that, okay. And then we want to hold it and flip it over. And what you're going to notice is a place that that plug actually goes into. Now, until we get our charging port in there, then we really don't have anywhere for our home button to go. So the next thing we're going to do once we get our home button in is we're going to put our digitizer right on top of that, okay? We're going to put our digitizer right back on top. So our next step is we're going to grab our LCD digitizer combo, okay? And we're going to go ahead and reinstall the LCD and the digitizer combo, okay? So the first thing we're going to make sure we do is these little ribbon cables at the top, guys, you want to make sure that they don't get pinched. Now, a lot of times the problem with this particular step is what will happen is you'll get this caught up and it'll get pinched and it won't come all the way through. And if you do that, what's going to happen is as you get your logic board in, you're going to find that this is too short and it's not going to reach where it needs to plug in your logic board. So you got to be very careful that you don't get your ribbon cable on your LCD combo and digitizer combo pinched. So what you want to do is you want to slide it right through this opening. That's the first thing you want to do is you want to slide both of those ribbon cables right through that opening in the middle frame. Okay, so you're going to slide it right in. Once you slide it right in, the next thing you want to make sure is that, again, you're not pinching and it's coming all the way through before you begin to really insert your board. All right, so it's all the way in. The next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and line up your feet, your little feet on your digitizer combo. You want to line those up with your screws and where they go. All right, so once we line that up, we're going to line that up on both sides and all corners. Once we get it in, we're not going to push it all the way in. We're just, because the next thing we want to check is we want to make sure that this ribbon cable is coming all the way through and it's not being pinched. All right, so you want to make sure it's coming all the way through. It should be up about maybe an inch or so higher than your metal mid frame. Once it is and you know it's good, then you can go ahead and push that combo, that digitizer combo. Go ahead and be careful when you push because you want to make sure it should go in pretty easy. Shouldn't be a lot of resistance because you don't want to bend those legs, okay? Kind of work with it a little bit. All right, so now we got our button lined up. We check our button, we got a nice click. All right, and again, you're going to have on here, you're going to have a cover protective sheet, so you really don't have to worry about touching it too much. And you want to be careful when doing this that your screws don't fall out, your side screws, because we just lost some side screws, so we can go ahead and put those back in. But there you see it, guys. Now we have our digitizer LCD combo inserted all the way around. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and tighten our screws. So once we get that in and we know that our ribbon cable's in and everything's clear and everything's looking good, the next thing you want to do is go ahead and put our screws, tighten our screws down. So these side screws, you're going to go ahead and tighten your side screws down with your Phillips screwdriver. All right, we're going to do that on both sides. Alrighty, there we go. Got them all in. We got one more that fell out that we got to put in. So if they fall out, guys, don't worry. Wow. All right, now the next thing we're going to do once we tighten up our side screws, we're going to go ahead and put in our corner screws. That's the next stop. So we're going to grab the next step. So we're going to grab all of our corner screws. So we're going to grab our corner screws and go ahead and insert all of our corner screws. All right, now what you guys will notice is your corner screws are very small. And guys, you want to be careful with these screws. I mean, you don't have to really over tighten anything because what you'll notice is they're so small and small screws will strip very easily. Okay, so you never want to strip anything, you know, in regards to putting screws in and taking screws out. You want to be very careful when inserting and removing screws, just because the smaller the screws are, the easier they are to strip. And you never want to have to try to take out strip screws. It just slows you down. It's very counterproductive. All right. So again, right now in this step, what we're doing is we're inserting all of our corner screws. All right. So now we have all our corner screws in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to put our vibrator back in. So let's go ahead and reinsert our vibrator. So again, GSM vibrator looks like this, guys. So we're going to go ahead and set that right in. And you'll see exactly how it's designed to go in. And you have a long screw and a short screw. Your long screw goes on the left side. So go ahead and insert the long one. And you might need to hold it with one finger because it does have a little spring on it. Get that long screw in there. Just tighten it down. And then you have your short screw. And line that right up. And insert your short screw. All right, so now we just put our vibrator in. Okay, so our next step is we're going to insert our charging port. Okay, I'm going to insert our charging port. Now we want to be very careful because down here at the bottom we have, remember, our home button flex. Okay, so we just want to put this charging port in. It's got the microphone on it also, so we're going to make sure we stick it in the little hole for the microphone right there at the bottom. There's a little hole right here. I'll show you guys a little closer. What you guys should be able to see is right here. You want to put that in that little hole. All right, that's your microphone. And then once you get that in, just go ahead and line everything up. Now what you want to make sure is you're not sitting your charging port on top of your ribbon cable for your home button. So you want to make sure you pull that out before you actually screw it down. And guys, one thing about these screws, if you begin to screw and you feel resistance and the screw is not going in properly, what you want to do is stop, screw back out, and then screw back in. It's a very important technique because what will happen a lot of times is you won't be properly on the thread and you go to screw and you'll feel like there's some tension before you actually screw the screw all the way in. And what it is you're not aligned properly on the thread. And if you're not aligned properly on the thread, it won't go all the way in. So instead of pushing through that, just back out a little bit, it'll straighten up, and then go ahead and reinsert. Okay, so now we have our charging port in. Now what we want to do, the next step is to go ahead and connect our home button. So using your tweezers, you can just insert your home button. Slide it right in. And then just flip your clip right down. All right. So now we have our home button connected and our charging port in. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to put in our sound module. And we're going to insert our sound module. So your sound module should slide right in, and all you have to do is take your screw, sound module screw, and we're going to screw it right in. And your sound module screw goes right here on the right side. All right, there you have it. Your sound module's now in. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to insert our logic board, guys. So we're going to go ahead and grab our logic board. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to make sure everything's aligned. Okay. We're inserting our logic board, and we want to make sure that we're not pinching off any of these ribbon cables at the top. So our digitizer LCD ribbon table is going to go on top of the logic board, and then all of the cables at the bottom, which is our power flex cable, our camera, and our volume flex cable, they all go on the bottom. Okay, so we're going to line those up, make sure everything is clear of our logic board. And what you want to do is you want to make sure your logic board holes are lined up, guys. And as long as your holes are lined up pretty good, then it should fit in really nice and perfect, okay? And once you get it lined up, your logic board should be over each hole that your logic board screw goes into, okay? So the next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and start to insert your logic board screws. But before you do that, guys, you want to make sure, you always want to test right here. You always want to test. You always want to make sure that these ribbon cables are long enough and they're in the right place when they go to when you go to put them in. So you don't want to connect them yet. You actually want to get your screws in first, but all you want to do is make sure that all your cables are aligned, so you're not putting your screws in before you'll make sure your cables are aligned, because you don't want to have to backtrack if they're not. Sometimes these particular will get pinched, these particular ribbon cables, and they won't be long enough to actually reach where they need to connect, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and insert all of our screws. And here you kind of just got to remember where your screws go, guys, which is pretty simple. It's pretty easy. You'll notice you got this big screw right here, this big one. This is the one that goes in the top right up here. Actually keeps your audio jack in. It's the big one that you use your flathead screwdriver for. Goes right here at the top, guys. All right, put that one in. Now we're just going to go ahead and put in the remainder of our logic board screws. This one down by the sound module. We'll put that one in next, okay? And then what we want to do is, so what you need to remember now, guys, is you have the connector here, but remember right here, this is your EMI shield screw. That's a logic board screw also, so we're not going to put that one in yet until we actually get our EMI in. So what we can begin to do now that we have all of our screws in, guys, is what we want to do is we want to go ahead and connect our ribbon cable. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go down to the sound module and we're going to connect our antenna. All right, so you guys see your antenna clamp, so we're going to go ahead and connect that. And again, we're working front to back. All right, so let's go ahead and connect our antenna clamp. With this antenna clamp, guys, you want to make sure you get it lined up really nice before you actually put too much pressure on it, because you don't want to bend the cap. So next thing we're going to do is get our antenna on. So we got our antenna connected. All right, that's the next thing we're going to do. So once we get our antenna clamp connected, we're going to work our way up, okay? So we want to go ahead and now start to connect everything back to our board, okay? So our charging port connector, we're going to go ahead and connect that. Make sure everything's lined up. All right, and we're going to go ahead and start to connect our ribbon cables at the top. So you just want to line those up. Make sure you line them up before you actually press, to not damage any of the pins. All right, so now we got our ribbons connected. We got two more. Have our LCD and digitizer ribbon connected. Again, you want to make sure those are lined up properly before you push. Now we have everything connected. All right, so now we have all our ribbon cables connected. Next thing we want to do is go ahead and put on our EMI shield. We have a couple of screws for that. All right, so we got our EMI shield in. We're going to continue to work our way up. So the next thing we're going to do is we have this particular shield in. Now what we're going to do is we're going to move on up, and we're going to insert our camera is next. Let's go ahead and insert our camera, and then connect it to the board. Okay. There we have our camera inserted. All right. So the next thing we want to do, so we have our camera in. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to insert our EMI shield and grab our screws. All right. So remember your EMI shield, guys. This is your EMI shield. We're going to go ahead and put that back on. And again, this is the GSM model. So we're going to go ahead and line that right up. All right, so we line that up and we should see all of our holes. And now it's just a matter of putting the right screws in the right holes. So I like to work left to right. So I'll go ahead and grab my logic board screw. And go ahead and insert that one. And then you have the long screw, which is very obvious. It goes at the very top in this particular hole. All right. Alrighty. I want to make sure we're down in there. EMI shield's in. All right, and that screw. All right, so the next screw. Now we're just going to start filling in our holes, guys. So what you have here are two smaller screws. Right here. Very small screw by the camera. It's a very small screw. And then you have another very tiny screw underneath that one. And these screws are very tiny, guys. Screw that one in. Maybe 2 turns is all it takes to put those in. And then you have this one remaining screw over here by on the very right side. And there you have it. Your EMI shield is now back in, guys. Your EMI shield is now back in. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to insert our battery. All right, so we have our battery here, and we have our battery clamp, and we have our battery screw. Okay, actually it's our antenna clamp and our battery. So what we want to do is we can go ahead and put our battery in, guys. All right, just set it right in there, just like that. Next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and grab this clamp, and we want to position our clamp the way that it goes. So the little silver piece goes to the facing up, and this clamp is going to sit right on top of your antenna. It's the antenna clamp. And then what you want to do is once you get that seated properly, you're going to go ahead and connect your battery. And what you guys will see is there's some slack on the battery cable that actually goes down in with the battery. You want to get that slack out of the way, and then you just go ahead and connect your battery, and now you have your clamp and your battery connected, and all you're going to do is insert now your battery screw. All right, now your screw is in, and that's it, guys. And the last thing, everything's back together on the back. All right, everything's back together on the front. And the last thing you want to do is you want to take your back cover, place your black cover right on, slide it in. And the last thing you're going to do, guys, is you're going to take your 2 screws and you're going to insert your 2 screws on the bottom. All right, and there you have it. And guys, next thing you want to do is you want to power up your phone. Oh, don't forget to insert your SIM card. All right, and there you have it, guys. Now, always remember, guys, when you finish reassembling, disassembling, or doing your repair, you want to always check your buttons for functionality, make sure they're clicking properly, and you want to always test your phone and make sure it's working properly. All right, good quality check always helps, guys. Okay, and that's the disassembly of your iPhone 4 GSM model. And this is William Agnew, the Cellular Repair School, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next training video.